Okay, this is episode 9 of the English Way, and I'd like to welcome the wonderfully feisty Leilani Dowding. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. Thank you for having me on.
Yes, it's been a while. I think the last time we spoke was about 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago.
Yeah. God, that's flown
What
by.
it has, but we thought it was crazy then.
Just gets worse and worse and worse, doesn't it?
It does, yes. Before we start, look, I'm gonna thank you, right? The reason I'm sat here doing this is because of you, right? So when it was the British thought leaders you came down for, wasn't it?
Yes, yeah.
And first off, I've got to say I didn't know quite what to expect, being you being a former model, and I know lots of models and things like that, and some of them are really not very nice, and some of them are lovely, right? So I didn't know what to expect, and I've got to say you're one of the most down-to-earth people I think I've ever met.
Thank
Very,
you.
very, very, very genuine. And it was whilst we were sitting, and I think you and I could have talked for hours. We could have went down every single rabbit hole there ever was, and it was just a very, very easy, free-flowing conversation. And that set the spark off in my head that I need to sit down and have conversations with people. Pretty much unscripted, just a general,
Yeah.
let's just talk and see what happens. And when I left the network, that's what was in the back of my head. I need to go and do what I did with Leilani with other people. Because I think we kept talking, we kept on to turn the cameras back on, and we probably had a better conversation off camera than we did on camera.
I know,
And I
it's
thought,
funny.
yes,
It's funny how
yeah.
it happens sometimes because you just feel free and you just chat away. And yeah, definitely.
Well, that's where the good stuff, it's when you drop the barrier and you can just speak freely and you can actually discuss, well, what's your feelings about this? Why? How does this affect you? And it's like, you can just get people to be honest, whereas most people prepare, they build themselves up into something. I mean, long term, I'd like to get it in a room with people. I think that's where the magic really happens, when you get that personal chemistry mixing. That's kind of, that's good. But look, we've got loads to talk about, and I think our original talking points went out the window by about Monday.
It happens, isn't it? You wake up the next day and it's like, oh my
what
God,
the hell?
like,
Yeah.
what's just happened now? So there's just always something, and you think, sometimes I think, oh, if I just turn off my phone for a minute, just get back to, my animals, growing some plants, just life. Maybe, when I come back on, nothing's really going to change much. And then you look back on and see what's going on in the world. You're like, how's it just got crazier since yesterday or last week or last month? It's astonishing every day.
It's changing in like 24-hour cycles at the moment. And I think everybody understands why. It's been a race. It's been a race against time since 2020. Since January 6th, 2020, it's been a race against time. They knew they had 4 years to create as much disruption as possible to bring in. I mean, everyone calls it the New World Order. It's global communism. That's what they want. And they knew they had a finite amount of time because, Trump stated that he will destroy communism.
Yeah.
And I think the rest of the world are kind of terrified because they've spent 150 odd years building up this network globally, bit by bit. And then they're finally at the point where they can seize control in 2016. And he went and won it, didn't he?
Yeah.
So they know he's going to smash them. And it's a race against time. And now we've got this 90-day window from the last election to when he gets inaugurated. And I think they're going to try and burn the world. I think they'll try and burn the world for at least a couple of years after.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I said this, I think they're stepping it up now. Until January 20th, when he gets sworn in, they're going to step it up and they're going to crack down on everything. They're going to try and crack down on all free speech. They're going to step up wars. They're going to escalate things. Things are just going to be, it's just all going to be put on fast forward now until he gets in. If he does get in, if they don't do anything to him between now and him, because it is a long way away, and that's my concern as well, that, they've had attempts on his life. I think that I can't see how they would stop between now and then. So I do think they're going to step up everything that they're doing. And I think we've seen that with the escalation of the war in Ukraine by allowing long-range missiles, British and American long-range missiles, to be fired now and programmed by, the British. So I think everything's going to be escalated.
Yeah, I mean, I think they'll at least try another couple of times before he gets out who is authorizing and pushing this. I expect at least another 2 attempts on his life between now and next year, maybe April or May, before he actually finally gets on top of it all. And I think even then he'd have to sit quite carefully for a couple of years. He's going to make some big enemies. I think one of the telling signs is that in his last election, he appointed a JFK, RFK type figure to go after Big Pharma, and he was found assassinated after 6 months. So I think he's made some very, very powerful enemies,
Yes.
and he needs to be very, very careful. But it is where it is. It's been a great victory, and I know you danced for days afterwards.
I did. You know what? I was really happy. And it doesn't matter whether you like him as a person or you don't like him as a person. To me, it just represented hope and some change. And we've been in a situation where it's just like the woke agenda's getting worse, the financial situation's getting worse, wars are being escalated, things are looking really bad. And to me, it's just like we haven't really had much hope. And this just gave me a little bit of hope. I was soon, after a week, probably sobered back down to the ground by the fact that actually I don't live in the USA. I live in England. And right now we're under Stalin's Starmer. So, it does bring you back down to earth. But, I was happy. And to me, it does represent, I just felt a big shift. I felt a massive shift energetically that people just thought, wow, okay, now we've seen there are people, most people in America are sick of the nonsense. They're clearly sick of the nonsense. They've voted that way to show that they're sick of the nonsense. They've got out and they've got off their butts and they've gone and done it. And whether or not they feel they can speak publicly and be vocal about how they feel, it doesn't matter. They have shown that this is how they're sick of this woke agenda. They're sick of it. They're sick of the censorship. They're sick of it all. And, hopefully things from America do trickle over to England. So hopefully it won't be too long.
Well, I think I don't think it'll be too long. I can't see this government lasting. And I said that the day after the election here. The mandate is so low. They have a paper mandate, but not a spiritual mandate of the people. They hate it, and they were even before they went in. Percent, and you could probably chuck between 2 and 4% of them, those with disgruntled Tory voters.
For sure.
It's a tiny, Saddam Hussein had a bigger mandate in Iraq. So it's a tiny, tiny mandate, and I can't see them lasting at all.
I just don't know what happens. Like, how do you, I don't know how you get them out. They need to go. They're just, I don't even think they can. You've seen how their popularity's just sunk. I think any one of those 18% of Brits that voted them have probably got buyer's remorse. So, I don't even know how we get rid of them, but I don't even think they care that we hate them. I don't even think that they care. I don't think there's a soul inside Keir Starmer that actually even knows what it means to be so disliked. And he just doesn't care. He doesn't care.
Yeah, there's something off. The guy, I think he's mentally unwell. How I see it playing out is that number one, they're not going to be able to withstand the pressure from Donald Trump. Donald Trump's half British, right? So his mother was Scottish. He loves this country. He will not let it go to rack and ruin. England is, if England falls, Europe falls.
Yeah.
Right? As much as if America falls, the West falls, England is the thing that's holding up all of you culturally, financially, politically. England has been the liberty. It is the America of Europe, right? So if we go, then Europe will just fall in a matter of months, 9 months, 12 months.
I've seen JD Vance come out and say, look, we need to have the same values, or the other countries need to have the same values as us when it comes to free speech and stopping censorship. These countries need to have the same values of us. So maybe they pull out NATO. Maybe that would send a massive shock if America left NATO. Whatever, Donald Trump's done it before. He's left the World Health Organization. There's no reason to think he wouldn't leave any of the other little clubs of the acronym clubs, as I call them, the 3 or 4 letter acronyms for these big old clubs that they have. So that wouldn't surprise me. And like JD Vance said, I think it's really important that we share the same values as long as they're good values, because God forbid, had Kamala got in, I would not have wanted to be sharing those values.
Well, it's interesting. The European values are because of the revolutions that happened 250 years ago, the European values are more like communism. Britain didn't partake in that. And America's founded on British values. It's founded on English values. And we have all the same rights as the Americans. They're just not codified into a single document. So what's happened since the early 1900s is they've chipped away at all of these English rights until we're more like the European rights, which are more in line with communism. It's the whole thing. We've been infiltrated from the inside out. And I don't think Trump will let it slide. They've made an enemy of Elon, and Elon has all the private excommunications. So they're idiots. They're idiots. Because he knows. If he's saying they're going to get crushed, he knows. And Team Trump are going to make it a point of crushing privately and quietly. They're going to crush the British establishment.
I mean, it's funny, isn't it? I mean, even when Hamza Yusuf threatened Elon, he was like, "Go for it." He's obviously got the private communications going on. He goes, "Whatever you've said in public, I know your private communications are worse." So, like you said.
So I think that's one aspect. I think the other aspect is their support's going to drop down to a fact that the only people who will support them are the ideologues, the radicalists, and the trade unionists. I think everyone else will abandon them completely. Now, so if you look at the electoral map, they pretty much voted centre-right. The majority of people, it was either a conservative or reform split. The North nearly went completely reform. So you had places up here that had been Labour since the 1930s, suddenly were teetering on the verge of going for reform. So once they sort their act out, and they're a bit up and down, they don't know quite whether they're Arthur or Martha at the moment.
Yes.
Then the country will just flip. But it's the voter apathy that needs broken. So that's one aspect. Two, I think the cabinet is so low IQ that they'll just make blunder after blunder after blunder.
Yeah.
I don't think Keir Starmer's a particularly intelligent man. I know Carl Benjamin said he had him as an IQ of roughly 100. I don't think it's 100.
But I think he has the intelligence it's intelligence of being able to read and repeat, like a lot of these highly educated people are. They don't necessarily have common sense. They don't have a living intelligence. They have like the intelligence that you can read something, take it in, and regurgitate it, and that's kind of it. He remembers all the laws. He was a lawyer. He can remember he can find his little loopholes around the human rights. But as far as thinking on his feet, and I don't believe he can do it. He's also got no feel for anything. It's like he's soulless. It's like he has no feeling or empathy or anything like that. So it's all just that memory-based kind of intelligence.
Yeah, because he goes back to a default position. When he mentioned 4 days in a row, my father was a toolmaker. And then he went, no, my father was a toolmaker. And everyone laughed. He went, no, no, no. It's like he can't understand. He can't read the room. He cannot get it. It's like, look, stop it. That might be factual, but it's making you look like an idiot.
Yeah.
And he can't. That was, for me, was the red flag. Was like, oh my God, this guy's disconnected from reality. This guy can't. That's something wrong with him.
Completely disconnected. And
right.
That's what I was looking for. Critical thinking. He can't think critically at any point. It's like when I saw an interview with him on Sky News, and the interview was like, yeah, but what you're doing, this escalation by England letting Britain, allowing them to use long range missiles. What if this brings us into war? Well, we have to stand by Ukraine. And they're like, yeah, but what are you going to tell the people at home watching this, concerned that this could drag us, Britain, into the war, and we're no longer a proxy. It's actually our weapons now, and they're being programmed by us. So, and he was like, we have to stand. It's like he only had those talking points. It's like he's been pre-programmed, and he can't think about anything else. It's like he's in this box. He can't see what the greater issues are for people.
Yeah, he's the ultimate NPC. He's the ultimate CCP NPC. And I think that's what we'll see more and more. So like Joe Biden's bought and paid for by the Chinese government, and they admit it. Okay, they publicly admitted it in December 2020. I have it on a MacBook around the corner there. They were up on stage in a big conference, and they just said, "Yeah, we paid Joe Biden. It's a good investment." I think Keir Starmer is under the influence of the Chinese government through Blair. Blair works directly for a Chinese fundraising arm called the 48 Group Club. The WEF are Chinese government. They are Klaus Schwab's books, which I have in another room. They call it the Chinese-style socialism. The selling of the Chagos Islands, which would be snapped up by China, would give China military dominance in the West because it's currently used by the Americans for the same thing in the East. So everything he's doing only benefits China. You look at the mass destabilization of the West, the immigrants, it's all about destabilizing the West so China can get a foothold because they can't fight a fair fight. They can't go toe-to-toe against the West. So I think he's a Chinese paid and bought individual, and I think that will come out. I think there'll have been backdoor communications for 2 or 3 years with the EU about undermining Brexit. So I think all of these things are going to come out in the next year. Now, the way you get Labour out, Labour don't have a leadership election like the Tories. They can have a leadership challenge, and if it's significant enough, it will trigger an election. So that's one avenue, and the other avenue is the monarch. But I can't see the monarch doing that. I don't think they've got the testicular fortitude to step in and do that. But I think it'll come from the Labour Party itself because it's a coalition of uneasy truces. You've got the wokists on one side who are hated by the Islamists and would throw them off a rooftop if they had the chance. You've got the trade unionists in the middle who kind of hate everyone who's got a pound more than them.
Yeah.
And then you've got the hardcore Marxists who just thinking, well, at some point I'm going to shoot you all. So it's an uneasy alliance. It's a coalition of tiny little factions which represents their political strategy. And I can't see it lasting. I cannot see it lasting. Once the pain really begins to bite, Rachel Reeves goes, then we know there's a chink in the armor. And all we've got to do is keep exposing because they cannot stand the scrutiny. They're very thin-skinned. And keep making jokes.
It's worrying to me, though, how Rachel Reeves has just lied so badly on her CV about her job and her role as an economist. And yet it still seems like nothing's happening. And then, I mean, I don't know if you saw it last night. It's to me, it's like they've said the quiet part out loud. I mean, we all know that Keir Starmer was working with the globalists, and he finally said, we're working with BlackRock, and actually named it. And I sat there yesterday, I was like, he just said it. Like what we've all been saying, what I've been saying forever, that we need to really watch out because everything's going to be bought up by investment companies like BlackRock. And there he is, just saying it. And, you know, BlackRock and Vanguard own so much of the farming in the USA, and they control so much of it, and they control all of the big food companies. And then we've just seen what's happened with the inheritance tax rate on farmers being pushed through. And it's like, can you people just join the dots now? Can we just start joining the dots? Because this is not like we can see into the future. It's just that we know what dots to join. And if you look at the big picture, you can actually see what they're doing and what they're planning and how it works. So when I say, look, I've said for, years, the next attack is going to be on our food and our farmers, it's because I've seen what's happened in America with the big investment companies, and it's the next thing to come here. They've already, it's already taken over our water. They're taking over homes, accommodation through Serco, through buying up, student accommodation, accommodation for refugees, all of these things. You see it. So obviously the last and final attack is going to be on our food. And, they're already trying to turn people against the farmers, telling people that the farmers are greedy. And, these are people with such tiny returns on their investments.
I just discussed it. There's 4 pillars of society that you need to protect at all costs, and that's your youth, your elderly, your military, and your farmers. Because without those four, your nation collapses. And I think it shows you the level of schoolboy politics that they're playing at. But it's also communism 101. This is what they do. They go after the farmers first. It'll be the landlords next. CCP prided themselves on the number of suicides that their policies created. So that's one less. So every farmer dead is one less farmer for them to worry about. They will be seeing this as a good thing. And these people are sick. They are disgusting. But I also think that Britain has had this sick fascination with socialism since Marx. And I think it needs to be completely rooted out. And weirdly enough, I can't see it happening any other way unless we fully see what is behind the mask. It has to be revealed. I can't see us getting out of it and rooting it out any other way than totally laying it bare. Because this is, England is the spiritual home of Marxism. Yeah. He wrote it here. He lived here. He's buried here. We need to completely flush this out. So I think it's, our job now is a case of right, let's just explain to people what's going on. Let's expose it. Which brings us to your wonderfully strategically coloured hat, which is great. And so I take it you were there on Tuesday, weren't you?
I did. I went down to the farmers' protest. A lot of people think, I live on a lot of land. So people think, oh, is she a farmer? Has she got anything to do with farming? I don't have anything to do with farming. So therefore, this inheritance tax rule whichever way it goes, doesn't make a difference to me. I'm not a farmer. My land isn't used for farming. Now, it is an old dairy farm, and it has been split up into pieces and sold off. None of whom has been sold off to farmers. All of that land from that dairy farm has been taken out of farming. Unlikely to be used as farmland again. I'm not going to build on mine. I don't think my neighbours who have bought the bits of land are ever going to build on theirs. We've actually bought it to prevent solar farms, wind farms, building going up. So unless it gets compulsory purchase, that land is going to stay lovely land. I've got horses on it. So it's not farmed. So even though there's horses and animals and my hobby chickens, it doesn't class as farmland anymore because it's not being used to produce food. So just want to say that, get out of the way, that I have no skin in this game, but I eat. So I do have skin in the game because I eat, and therefore it's important that, we support the farmers because that's where our food comes from. We do not, the most insane thing would be to have no food security in our country. The most insane thing would be to build solar farms and wind farms on amazing farmland or have it sold off for buildings. So what's going to happen with this? And I learned so much actually by being there and listening to farmers that have had this land in their family for generations. And I see there are farmers around me, and their fathers were farmers and their mothers were farmers. And, two farmers get married and both sides of the families were farmers. And it's a generational thing. It's not easy to just go, oh, wake up one day and go, I want to be a farmer, and you have to learn all these things. You see the kids of farmers, they're learning about the lamb and the sheep and the tractors and the combine harvest. They're learning all of that stuff at a really young age. So to have their land taken away from them, to have no incentive to farm anymore, it would just be, it's tragic and it's insane. It's just insane. It's not, if you don't look at it from their aspect, it's just a tragedy to see it being taken away from them when it's been in their family for generations. But for us, it's just insane to stop the incentives of people farming, because farming, the return on the money is not big. Yes, they've got assets, but they're cash poor, really. If I was to go to Dragon's Den or Shark Tank in America or Dragon's Den and say to the panel, hey, I've got this great idea. I want to produce food. I need a £3 million investment. And in return, we will all split 0.5% return amongst all of us. They'd just laugh at you, wouldn't they? The return is so low on the investment and the asset that you need to give them some other incentive to continue farming and to continue farming for generations. So That's why I went down on Tuesday. That's why I will always support our farmers, specifically on this rule.
Yeah, I mean, I personally think farming should be as near to a tax-free industry as possible. I think they should tax the land and that's it. I think everything else, it should be geared towards making it as easy as possible to produce produce. It's just all over-regulated, and it needs dismantled. The entire, NFU, all of it just needs dismantled and put back together. And we already have centralized planning for farming, which is it's a tenet of communism. It's one of the planks of communism, right? So we're already heading down this communist route. We have been for 50, 60 years since the war. If you look at the war, communism won that war because that's what's happened after it. So we need to roll back all of these things, but I think we're a few years away from getting to that point. I think it will come. We'll obliterate all of it. And look, you don't have to be a farmer. I grew up on the border of Northumberland. There's a river that separates County Durham and Northumberland where I grew. There's farmland till Scotland, right? I'd argue there's farmland till Edinburgh. And I watched it. I watched the seasons change. I watched the crops come in, the crops go. I played in the fields. All of that. You just have to see what they do day after day to realize that is where we come from. And you go back to the 1700s and virtually every family in England had farmland. It's how it was set up. Every family was associated and had their own plot somewhere. It was only in the 1700s when they realized that they weren't getting the efficiency out of the land that they compulsorily purchased it and gave it to what we would class as a mega farm, the big farms that we have now. And then we became very, very efficient at creating food. So England is a nation of farmers. That's what we are. You take the farming out of England, you don't have England. And that's part of the cultural attack.
Mm-hmm.
Even the olive tweed here, comes from your gentry getting down with your man on the farm and bringing his his city living elegance and bringing it from the farm onto him. This is where this all comes from. It comes from the farm. So there needs to be, if this doesn't tip the country, then nothing will. Southport almost did. And I think we're bubbling. We're going to explode.
You're right. Southport almost did. And what Keir Starmer did by lying about the people that had taken to the streets and locking a load of them away for non-violent actions that they did is disgusting. And that was to curtail any kinds of uprising, because people, like you said, people are bubbling over now, and people are getting really angry, and we can see it's an attack, and we can see, if farmers have to sell their land, who's going to buy it up? It's not going to be other farmers. It's going to be huge investment companies, as we mentioned, last night. Keir finally admitted that he's, working with BlackRock. So it's going to be people like that and big investment companies buying up the farmland, turning it into corporate and very intensive farming, instead of, how it is done now as kind of a way of life. It's going to be very corporatized, very intensively farmed. And I think that's a concern. And I think a lot of people see it. And like you said, it's a very small amount of people, the real socialists, the real Marxists that are out there saying, no, everyone should be paying some more tax. And it's like, hold on a minute. Like, you're literally asking for more tax instead of saying, well, and this is a really weird argument. They're like, well, I have to pay inheritance tax, so why shouldn't the farmers? It's like, none of us should be, actually.
No, yeah, none of us should be paying it.
So stop trying to say, well, they should pay it, because it's like none of us should be paying it. And we should be incentivizing farmers to farm more, to teach their children to farm more, to pass it down to their kids, not sell it off to big corporations. And then you see the anger building up, and then you see people are scared. Again, people are being scared to speak out, to really more actively protest because of what Keir Starmer did after the Southport massacre. Absolute massacre, where he lied and called every single person that came out far right. He lied, associated them with the EDL that's not been around for 10 years. And he locked people up for social media posts, locked people away for non-violent actions. I mean, okay, if you set something on fire, or you go to Greg's and you smash in a shop, like, why are you doing that? That's not
you should go to jail.
Really helpful. But if we stick to the non-violent people that got locked away, Peter Lynch, for example, who committed suicide after being locked away for 2 years for literally going to a policeman and saying, I pray for the children. He didn't do anything. He said, we went up to riot police and said, I pray for the children. He didn't push them. He didn't shove them. He just got in their face, got locked away. This is what's scaring people. Wayne O'Rourke, another guy, locked up for 3 years for social media tweets. He said something along that he called out the killer, the evil killer, as being a Muslim. He was told it was racist. Then we find out way after the event that he was creating ricin and he had an Al Qaeda handbook. So there's been a lot of cover-ups and there's been people put in jail, but this whole thing is to terrify us and to try and make us shut up. And that's where we mustn't allow that fear to stop us from, rising up against this kind of tyranny that we're seeing right now.
Yeah, no, we have to be brave. We have to be courageous. I mean, we have to be careful, but we have to be courageous. And it only takes a little bit of courage, if necessary, go and join the Free Speech Union and give yourself a little bit of backup.
Jimmy, I was like,
I did, yeah.
As soon as they got Bernie Smallforth, I was like, right, I need to join this. And I don't say anything insightful or mean. I just try and stick to facts. But even that, or these people, it's just insane what these people have been put away for.
It is, yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, I think it'll all get overturned. I think it's a post office 2.0. I think it'll all get overturned and somebody will sue them for absolutely millions because it's wrong. We just need to wait till the wind changes. But until that changes, it's almost like you can see it collapsing. The old system, the old establishment for the last 250 years is going to collapse, and you're watching it just disintegrate. And they're trying to cling on to power, and as they do, they're just going to pass more and more laws. And we almost have to circumvent it and just start creating a new world, new positivity, new music, new culture, new humor, everything. Just say, well, you're going to be gone in 5 to 10 years' time. We can't wait for you to go, so we have to start creating something that's positive and vibrant and forward-looking, whilst essentially pointing and laughing at you and exposing you as we go along. And I think that's how you do it. Yeah, we need to be like, no, we're not going anywhere. We are the English. You might be saying, oh, it's a decline. It's like, well, no, it's a managed decline.
Yeah.
This isn't the Roman Empire that gradually disappeared over 300 years. This is a managed decline. It's on purpose. And you can go back to communiques in the 1930s where the communist international community singled out Britain and America. The two nations they wanted to capture was Britain and America. They weren't bothered about anybody else. Everyone else was just a bonus. But it's Britain and America because they are the central controlling powers of the world.
I think, I've got to say, I think what you said, that laughing at these people as well is a powerful thing because they want you down. They want you in that negative state. But if you can look at it and see it, but also find some dark humor in it. I mean, people like Andrew Lawrence.
Yes,
Katie Hopkins, Dapper Laughs. You've got these people that create great humor, kind of through the irony of it all, really, about the insanity. And there's another one. There's a lady, I can't remember her name. I post her a lot because she's hilarious. She's a brilliant impressionist. Does these amazing impressions of like Angela Rayner and
I don't know what you mean. Yes.
Rachel Reeves. I post her a lot because she's funny, and you know what? You've got to be able to laugh at it because otherwise you sink into a very dark place. So I think it's really, it's what they want. It's all part of it, to have you in that state of mind. And they want people feeling depressed. They want people going to their doctors and saying, "Hey, I feel this way. Give me some pills or something to numb me." But you mustn't. You've got to I think you need to feel it, and you need to feel the emotions that it brings, because that's how that's going to motivate change in people.
Well, yeah. The whole point of communism is to crush the human spirit. And that's why their architecture is brutalist. That's why their policies are brutalist. They will use the woke agenda to get to a point where they destabilize society enough, and then it's complete lockdown like in the Soviet Union. and all the wokeists are put to death. Essentially, that's what happens because they hate it. They hate the lifestyle that the wokeists are living will be wiped out, completely wiped out. It'll be it's as harsh as Islam, right? So we have to go the opposite way and just find things to celebrate and find something to lift up. And it's like I'll always encourage women to get involved because women give men a bit more oomph, right? Behind every good man, there's a good woman because when the women get involved, it gives the men another when they can't feel the presence of God, right? The woman's there to pick them up. That's what it is. And it gives the men another layer to carry on for. And I think it's Edward Dutton said the same thing, and I've been saying this for years because I've seen it with the MAGA movement. When the MAGA moms got involved en masse in 2018, that entire movement changed. It completely changed. And I think the same thing needs to happen in the UK. The women need to get involved. The mothers need to get involved because it will just give another layer to the men. It'll transform overnight. So, ladies, please get involved. Give us your memes and your inspiration and everything else because it gives men something else to fight for. We get sick of our own company, I think, is the thing. But no, although we're in a really bleak place, I don't think it's as bleak as people think. I think it's loud, but it's they're heading into a controlled demolition of the United Kingdom. So what a lot of people don't know is that there was 2 Chinese generals retired in 2001 from the CCP military, and their retirement gift was a 25-year strategy to take over the West without having a war. It included trade, it included bribery, political corruption, sexual corruption, culture. So then you get the rise of TikTok, you get the rise of the buying of politicians, and that war essentially ends in 2026. So Britain's still a captured nation, so I think we'll see an acceleration next year. But I actually think the acceleration will be their downfall, in part because this cabinet can't keep their mouth shut.
No.
Everything they blurt out everything. They say the quiet part out loud all of the time. Like after the inheritance tax thing was announced, they had one of the advisors on who said, I hate farmers. We don't need small farmers. Just get rid of them.
They did. They had the strategist on literally saying, it's an industry we don't need. We can do to the farmers what Thatcher did to the miners. And it's like, wow, you're really telling us. We need to listen. You're really telling us you really, really hate them.
Yeah. And now, I mean, the farming's one issue. We've found out, but yesterday, the day before, that we're literally now involved in the beginnings of what could be World War III. Now, I know through various people that we've had troops in Ukraine for a very long time, but it's been in an unofficial capacity. And we're now in an official capacity, and we're firing missiles into Ukraine. Putin is offering to test his new hypersonic missiles on the United Kingdom. And like you said, if it hit London, wouldn't be that bad. But in terms of where we stand, I don't think it's ever been as dangerous. I think the only thing that's stopping the floodgates from opening is the back channel communications.
And I think that I actually at this point think that Putin might be a little saner than our leaders, because our leaders don't seem to care about escalating. And if Putin decided to escalate at the rate, the UK, the US is escalating. And when I say those, I mean the people controlling them, because I don't think Biden's made a single decision. I think the decisions are being made for him by whoever's running America right now.
I don't think he even chooses his own ice cream flavor, does he?
Exactly. So it's like, if Putin wants to escalate, I mean, we'd all be toast. It would just build and build. And I've said for 3 years, there's only 2 ways out. It's going to be blowing each other to smithereens or a negotiation. And I truly believe that when Trump gets in, there will be that negotiation. And I believe that negotiation would have happened a long time ago had we had different leaders in the West, but all these leaders have been installed. We had Boris Johnson, who supposedly scuppered the peace deal right at the start. So I've always said this, and my position hasn't changed. I've always said that negotiation would have been the only way out. I didn't agree with any of the escalations. I didn't agree with any of the sending money to them. I thought, I looked at the history, and I think it's really important. And I think a lot of people have done that research since, looking at the history of Ukraine, looking at what happened in the Donbass region, looking at how the Ukrainians were killing the Russian speakers in Ukraine. I think that's really important. And the way the government narrative has completely changed in the last 4 years compared to in 2014 and the time leading up to that. So, I think, I do think that there could potentially be peace in January should the decision makers of the West right now.
I think it's going to be harder for him to get the quick peace deal he was after now. I think he might get ceasefires, but I think the actual ratification of a full deal might take him a bit longer now. I think he will get it. I have no doubt about that, but they're trying to make it almost impossible to come back from.
Yes, they're taking it to the point of no return, basically, I think. And that, that's why they're doing it, because there's just too much money involved. It's the military industrial complex. There's so much money involved. There's so much money laundering going on that, the thought of peace coming was just like, they don't want it. They'd rather see us all dead than get peace right now.
Here's a question for you then. So the Tory party are effectively full of Twinkies and extramarital affairs, right? Labour's probably full of the same, plus a lot of predators. Why are people in the limelight, particularly in politics, so compromised? Does politics compromise them, or are they there because they're compromised and easily controlled? You've mixed in a different level of the world than I have. You've probably seen at least through the veil on some of these things. You must have some.
Do you know, it's hard because I've never really been interested in politics until they made certain issues political. To me, I've always been interested in like the social aspect of things. So, and just, life in general. So, but they made things like lockdowns political. They made vaccines and vaccine mandates political. They've made this like insane trans agenda political. So everything's been made political. So I have to say that I haven't really spent a lot of time around political things or people. But I would imagine that it's a little bit of both. Like you have to, if they can compromise you, you can get a little further. If you do their bidding, you'll get a little bit further. If, they can install people. There's just so much money and power by the people that we don't see, that the people that aren't the faces, the people that run the BlackRock, Bill Gates, they're not politicians. The Klaus Schwabs, they're not politicians. Soros as well. But they have the money to back these people. And to me, that's where the problem is. And I don't know which way round it's there, whether I think it also takes a certain person to want to be a politician. Like, people always say to me, why don't you run? And I'm like, I cannot think of anything worse. The stress I would feel being put in that kind of power to try and change things, and knowing how difficult it is, and the amount of money going around and the amount of compromise other people. So I think it takes a certain person to step into politics. Sometimes I think there are very good people that do it because they really do want to see change, and it's
about 20% of them, isn't it? I think the rest are thoroughly corrupt.
And then it's like, but then I just think there's just so many corrupt ones out there, or just ones that just don't care. They just want the power for themselves. They really don't care about the people. To them, it's just a job. To them, it's a step up. To them, it's a power thing, as opposed to, right, I really want to go and help people, and this is why I'm getting into it, because I really want to make a change and a difference and help people. I think it can be like, right, if I get into politics, I can, like, give this deal to these friends and shift some money to these friends and the cronyism and do all of that, as opposed to the people that really go into it and think, I want to try and make a difference to the people in my constituency, or I want to try and make a difference to the people of this country. I just think it's, for some of them, it's just a money power thing.
We have a moral problem, don't we? Which means we have a spiritual problem. If we have a moral problem, we have a spiritual problem in this country. And I think that's probably why they undermined the Orthodox religions in the first place, to create that moral vacuum. And then moral relativism of Marxism means they can do whatever they like. And it's like, well, it doesn't matter, because it's about who wins. Yeah, it's pretty bad. So I know you've got to get away. You got people coming. Looking at where we find ourselves right now, and being quite an inspirational woman yourself, what do you want to tell everybody? What message of hope and inspiration do you want to give us?
I want to say that I truly believe that good does always win. I think the pendulum always does swing. I think there's going to be hard times ahead, but you just got to fight through them, be strong. Remember that family and friends are the most important things. Care about the people around you. Build networks and communities. I've always said this for the last few years, of like-minded people. And feel free to speak your mind. I'm not saying go on social media and blast everything out. I'm not saying that, because I don't want anyone to ruin their job prospects or be able to feed their kids or whatever, put the roof over their heads. But speak to people in person and get a feel for how they ask questions. And if you don't want to give statements about how you feel, ask them questions, how they really feel about things, and try and suss people out. And don't worry too much about changing people's minds, because I think we might be a bit far down the road for that. But build your own networks of people that really feel the same, and can give you strength in the times when it gets really hard. Build work in your communities and your networks, and good people who will have your back, and will have your back.
I think that's a good point. Get in touch with your local farmer, get in touch with your local fruit and veg supplier, create people around you who can help, carpenters, plumbers. Just build networks, because I think we do have a difficult 2 or 3 years in England, very difficult.
Yeah.
And I think we need to, I've got several freezers that are chock full of meat. I think we need to kind of have that common sense approach. But getting out and talk to people, that's excellent. A lot of people are stuck at home. And I think that you do need to get out and talk. And, I work in hospitality. I meet high volume of people. And I'll tell you now, most of them are in agreement. They might differ on a few issues, but almost everybody is in agreement. For instance, every single Muslim I know voted for reform.
That is interesting, and that's good. That is really good to know. That's good to know.
Now, yes, we have a problem with Islamism, which is the communist bastardization of Islam. And I think that is going to have to be dealt with across the West en masse in the next 5 years. But there are still a lot of good people.
Of course, absolutely. And I think it's really important that people need to understand the difference between that and extremists and the extremists. And look, we've got this great guy that's put the money into really backing reform. So I think he wants to see this country do better. And there are many people that have come to this country or in this country who do want this country to be to do well and to prosper, and aren't trying to destroy it from within. So, I think that's really important. And I think, you just got to get out and speak to people and see how much we all actually share in common, because there is a lot that we share in common. And like you said,
Absolutely.
I just think, there's a lot of people that, as I said, you can't tell things. I'm not saying to people, because I'm vocal on social media, I'm not saying be vocal on social media, because that's really not that important. What's important is those personal connections and speaking to people in person and understanding how many people, really feel the same way.
Yes,
And,
absolutely.
just want the best for this country now.
Not pride. It's like, get off your knees. If you look at the last 1,500 years, and America hasn't achieved this status yet, the last 1,500 years has been about England and Great Britain. It's our story, particularly in the West. It's our story. There's been nothing greater than England and Great Britain. So be proud. Get off your knees. It doesn't mean you have to go on antagonize and fight people, but just that pride will make people want to be curious about your culture. It'll make them, I like that. I'm going to align myself with that.
Yeah.
There was a reason Chris Eubank trotted around in riding boots and three-piece suits,
Yeah.
because the culture was ridiculously strong at that time. So yes, listen, it's wonderful. I could talk to you for hours. I think we genuinely could have a proper 3-hour conversation. But I know you have to get away. So it's been an absolute pleasure. Keep doing what you're doing.
And you too.
Your arc in the past few years has been one of the most amazing things to watch. It genuinely has. And I love the position you have. I love you and Billy. I think it's lovely. It's cute. I'm warning you, if you're ever in the room with Billy and I'm there, you're not getting a look in.
All right. I never do. I'm used to it.
So I have this thing where if I really respect a band or an artist, I don't learn their music because it demystifies it and I can't enjoy it. So I don't know. I don't know how to play Billy's songs because there was a few of those songs that partly the reason why I play today. And I don't want to go back and learn them because then I miss that thing. Because then I understand how it's all put together. And I don't want that. I want the magic of listening to it and enjoying it,
Like that.
Yeah, I hate you. Yeah.
It's really funny because I hear people talk about music and it and a little bit goes over my head because I really don't know that much about music at all. So I guess people talk to me about music or they ask me what I like, and Billy's like, "Oh God, don't get her talking about music." Like hers was like Janet Jackson or Paula Abdul or something like just pop, silly stuff. And then people talk about like the instruments, and I can't play. In 7 years, I still can't play a chord on the guitar. And he's tried to show me, but he's not. He's a terrible teacher, absolutely terrible teacher. So he's good at what he can speak, he can't teach. And I know I'm terrible with music or anything, and you can see, and I'm trying to understand what people say, and then my face kind of goes a little blank, and then I just have to say that I just don't know about music. I'm with a musician, and he's such a big part of my life, and I try and learn, but I just. Yeah, I don't. But I do understand exactly what you were saying about, when you break it down and see how it's put together, it kind of loses the magic a bit. So I do understand. I understand that bit.
Yeah. But listen, it's wonderful. It's wonderful to watch you do what you do, and don't stop being you. We need that voice, and you do it very well. So thank you very much, and enjoy the rest of your day. And I'll speak to you soon.
You too, and thank you for having me on.
Wonderful, Leilani. Thank you. Thank you very much. Bye now.
Take care. Bye bye.